need the old Blade Runner. I need your magic. So we've got a new proper trailer for Blade Runner 2049. I've talked a little bit about this film before, and I want to now talk about my thoughts on this trailer. Before I get into them sort of too deeply or too specifically, I've got to say my general overall feelings are mixed, and I have points of concern. Now, I just want to stress that my concern about this is not of a level like the kind of concern that I had when I started seeing trailers for Ghost in the Shell, which was ringing all kinds of alarm bells and got worse with everything. This case, I'm still fairly confident it's going to be a good movie. So as I lay out my concerns, it's more about it not being what I would like to see out of a Blade Runner movie. So understand, nothing that I'm about to say leads to a conclusion, therefore I think the movie will be bad. I'm not going there. However, it does still seem to be, at least as the marketing is delivering it, headed in a direction that is not quite what I want. But let's start. I always like to start positive before I just bum everybody out. So it looks great. I mean, that's not a shock. Denis Villeneuve, who I probably just butchered the proper pronunciation of that name, but he makes really good-looking movies, and it looks very much like Blade Runner, and it looks like something Ridley Scott would have shot. Ridley Scott also makes gorgeous movies, so it looks great. The little bits of soundtrack that we get sounds like Blade Runner. That's big for me. I love that soundtrack. So that's a big deal for me. So that stuff is all good. So when I say things seem a little bit off, they're not quite clicking for me, it's in the fine details and it's things just being a little bit off. Now, I will cop to the possibility, as I usually do, that maybe this trailer is not properly representative of the film and that the things that I'm worried about are not actually the case in the finished product. I am aware that is possible. I am open to that as a possibility. And as I said, unlike, say, the trailers for Ghost in the Shell, which made me actively decide to not even go and see the movie, that is not the case here. I am still fully intending to see this movie, and nothing that I'm about to talk about is making me go, ugh! So there's just a feel and there's just a vibe, and I think it started with Jared Leto speaking and his lines about how civilization is built on a disposable workforce, and there was something about his delivery of that just felt very arch. It felt villain monologue-y. Now, if I were to contrast that with, say, Eldon Tyrell in the original, who obviously has kind of the same understanding. I mean, he's literally building a disposable workforce, but he seemed to have some degree of awareness and some degree of having come to terms with, but still understanding that there are issues with what he does. He didn't revel in the fact that what he was building was going to die, and he even seemed to have a certain understanding that what he was putting through was putting these creatures, these beings he was creating, what he put them through was probably not fair. There was a certain almost apologeticness, when he was talking to Roy about the fact that he couldn't give him longer life, or when he's talking to Deckard and he says how they give them false memories to create a cushion for their emotions. He says it's so they control them better, but there's this certain just little touch of almost affection in his voice. You get the sense that he almost kind of wants to give the replicants the best, very deliberately and forcibly short existence that he can afford them. So that kind of shade of gray, that softness, that, I can't get a total read on this guy on one line reading is gone. I feel like I get a really solid line. I get a really solid character reading on Jared Leto, like right off the bat. I'm like, well, there's our villain right there. And you don't get that from and that's very much has to do with Blade Runner being a noir. And in noirs, you don't deal in absolutes. You don't deal in firm, this is the way it is, which is the other thing. There was that whole extended, bit we're hearing, about there's a wall and you remove the wall and there's war. It's like, you're talking in a lot of certainty for a story set in a world that doesn't deal in certainty. And you're talking about big, oh, we are the last line of defense. And those weren't the exact words, but it's that sort of feels like that's too big. That's too big for Blade Runner. What I really love about Blade Runner is the world that it is set in is huge. And some of the ideas that it kind of skirts up against are really big ideas. But the actual plot, the story, the characters are not overly embroiled in this. Deckard isn't trying to unravel these philosophical conundrums or some massive corruption in the Tyrell Corporation. He's just trying to do this one case he was assigned to, and he's skirting up against, he's brushing against these much bigger things, but they don't consume what he's actually doing. He's still focused on the little thing because that's what he's there for. That's what he knows he can handle. You get the sense that he probably knows he's not up for these bigger things that he's skirting by. I mean, it's the same. It's like Chinatown. Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown. Like, that's too big. You were dealing with this little thing. It brought you to this bigger thing. You can't handle that. And that is the feel of noir, and that is the feel of Blade Runner. So when characters are talking in these big arch sweeping kind of dialogues, I worry that the film is over expanding the scope, because I don't think Blade Runner needs its scope expanded, because there's something wonderful about a really fully fleshed out, huge feeling world, but a small story being told within that. And that's one of the many things I love about Blade Runner. And again, based solely off this marketing, I'm a little bit worried that we're not going to get that. Now, I do have a certain amount of faith in this director. I think he has the potential to be able to handle this and know what he's doing. But again, I'm going to go off the marketing that they've shown me. And the marketing that they've shown me makes me just a little bit... And I kind of had to reverse engineer this whole feeling, because after watching the trailer, I was kind of like, something feels off, and I really had to kind of pick at it to figure out what was causing this gut feeling that wasn't quite selling it. Now, there are moments, what was the moment I really liked? And this might sound weird, or maybe other people felt the same way. I don't know. Let's find out. The moment that I was like, yeah, was actually between Harrison Ford and Ryan Gosling, when Harrison Ford says, "What do you want?" And there's a pause, and Ryan Gosling just says, "I just want to ask you some questions." And that feels right. That's noir. That's like, look, I'm just here to ask you these questions. And, you're looking at this crazy setting with this mood lighting. He obviously went through a lot to get there. It's like, I just want to ask you some questions. And that moment, that like connection between the two of them looking at each other, that felt like Blade Runner in a way that, Jared Leto with his milky eyes giving what really does feel like a chunk of a villain monologue. That feels off. And like I said, I'm not going to see this movie. I still definitely plan to see this movie. I have a pretty good amount of faith in this director. And like I said, visually, and they've got the soundtrack, and I'm still hopeful, and nothing that I see here makes me go, oh, they got it all wrong. It just seems to be pointing in a direction that isn't what I want. Now, that's not to say that it's not going to be good. It's not to say you shouldn't enjoy it. Maybe what other people like about Blade Runner isn't what I like about Blade Runner. But for the things that I love about that film, I worry that they're going to get lost, because, the sense that these characters are actually quite small is a big part of that original film. That's kind of Roy Batty's whole thing. His whole "I've seen things you people wouldn't believe" moment before his death is very much rooted in the idea of these characters are so small in this insane, gorgeous world that we've been watching them, move around within and bump up against big ideas. But like they're tiny little things in all of this. And nothing in the trailer made me think this is going to happen, but God help us if there's any kind of huge corporate level, big conspiracy. If that's the plot, we're in a lot of trouble, because it needs to be focused on people and replicants. It needs to be focused on individual characters, this should not blow up into, oh my God, we just blew the lid off. No. No blowing lids. Keep it on the characters. That's what I want out of Blade Runner. And things about this trailer make me worried that they might lose that tighter focus, and I hope that they don't. And as I say most of the time when I express concerns, I want to be wrong. I love being wrong. I love thinking that I know why something won't work, going in and getting something like that works and is fun, and I love it. That's one of my favorite things. So I want to be wrong. Please go ahead and tell me I'm wrong, politely, if you would. So in any case, what were your thoughts on this trailer for Blade Runner 2049? Whatever they were, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Give a listen to the Council of Geeks podcast or the Punch Like a Girl podcast. Both available on iTunes and Stitcher. They are on separate feeds though. And until next time, this council is adjourned.